All right, guys, we're going to do a little bit more reading here. Now, we did look at, we're not in the Old Testament, but a lot of times I like to go back to the Old Testament during the first part of the year, like in March and April, just to look at what happened so that we can get up to understanding what's going on in the New Testament. Because a lot of times, a lot of things in the New Testament, you can look back at the Old Testament because it's sort of a way that things were laid out in the Old Testament. They're sort of the same way in the New Testament, except with different types of people. So let's go back. I'm sure that some of you did get a chance to see the Ten Commandments the other night with Moses, right? So I was reading into you the end of Genesis about how Joseph was in charge of everything. And then when they went, and here it is, Exodus 1. It said, now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. Remember, Jacob was old, and he bought all of his 12 children with him. He bought his concubines, his wives. He bought everybody. Jacob bought all of his children. Now, I don't know exactly where Esau was, but you remember these were, I believe, Isaac, 2 children, Jacob and Esau. So he brought everybody into Israel, and they began to get old. Jacob passed away. Joseph buried his father. Joseph was the baby boy, which was the child of promise that was, sold into slavery by the brothers. So anyway, we're here at Exodus 1. Joseph got very old, and the grandchildren, 2 of his brothers, I think, passed away, 2 or 3 of them. And their children were raised up and had children. Moses was one of the grandkids. And so they were still forming nations, the older brothers, but Joseph had died. And it said, there went a man of the house of Levi and took to him a wife, a daughter of Levi. A woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him, that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took him and put him in an ark of bulrushes and debouted it with slime with the pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river banks. So this mother took the baby, which was the baby Moses, and let him go. He wasn't Moses, he was just a baby, and just let him float down the riverbank. And then the sister of Pharaoh, of the king at that time, the sister found the baby. You remember, we've seen it on the movie, and made the baby in over everything, because it was a king's sister's baby, and the baby had grown up to be very strong. And so it was really his uncle, but he was calling his uncle dad, which was the king Pharaoh at that time. And then he had another son, and they were bouting for the affections of the king, to take his seat. You saw the movie Ten Commandments, what happened? So long story short, Moses didn't know he was the chosen one of God, and he didn't know that he was really not of the nation of Egypt, but he was really an Israelite born of a slave mother. So when he found out, this is all in these chapters here, I don't want to read them, I just want to skip ahead. When he found out who he was, he went out into the, he killed a man for one, because this man was trying to beat Joshua with some whips or something. He killed that man, who was a general over the slave workers. And so he ran out, and he ended up in the arms of Jethro's daughter. He ended up being a sheep herder for Jethro. This is Exodus 3. And so he ended up marrying the older daughter. He could have anyone he wanted, but he married the older daughter. And so this older daughter was telling him about the God of the mountain. And so he wanted to see the God of the mountain. So he went up the mountain to the top, and there was a burning bush, and God was talking to him and telling him everything about how he would lead the children out of bondage, out of slavery, out of Pharaoh's hand, how he would do it. And he said, I can't do it because I can't talk amongst people like that. So he said, Aaron would be your speaker, and you will do as I tell you. And so he obeyed, and he went down and he started doing what God commanded him to do. And Aaron was his mouthpiece because I don't know if he stuttered or he couldn't speak. So Moses and Aaron, they went into Pharaoh together. And then when they went into the palace, the Lord began to do various types of plagues and things upon the whole nation to show them that his word will go forth over man. And it didn't help because his heart was hardened. And the Lord said, I hardened his heart because he wanted to go ahead and serve the purpose of what he was trying to do, which was get the children out of bondage. So, finally, the son, Pharaoh, he said, take your people and go out of here because God took, he said, the next thing I'm going to do, this is what Pharaoh said, I'm going to take the first son. You've seen it on the movie. And Moses said, the next thing you pronounce out of your mouth will be your own vengeance. It will come upon you. And so his first son was taken. And then after that, that's when he said, take the children. He said, take all of these Israelites out of here. Take everybody out of here because my son is gone. He said, I am tired of all of these plagues and these things happening. So Moses said, okay. And he went and packed everybody up. And he told them that night when the darkness was going over, he said, this is the Lord. He said, he is not going to bother the firstborn of our children, but he's going to take the firstborn who are not under him, who are not serving him, who don't believe. And so everybody came into that house that wanted to go with Moses and the other people there. They said, God passed my house. Joshua put the red blood on the house where his girlfriend was because she was a firstborn, even though she was there with Laban, So anyway, they ended up going out the next day out of Egypt, and they were doing just fine. Now Pharaoh decided to go after them. And so when they got to a big body of water, the Red Sea, I believe, they could not get across. So God opened a way. He made some sand in the middle of the sea, and they just walked right on across, and the water divided for them. They walked right on across that water. And when they got to the other side, Pharaoh started sending his men out first. He said, go after them. He stayed back because he was trying to see what would happen. He stayed back. He didn't trust it, but he sent his people out there. And a lot of them were swallowed up in the water. And so he went on back to where he was coming from. He was up on a high mountain watching before he went. And that's something, sent his people out there to get swallowed up. And so, and it looked like to me, after he seen the water open up and the children cross, I wouldn't have went after him. I would have said, look, that's it. His God is greater. No more chasing him. But he sent people after them to get swallowed up. So anyway, let's look at this here. We're in Genesis. It says, Moses, I have made thee the God to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Okay, so Moses took the children across the Red Sea. And what they began to do once they got across was they started setting up to live out in the desert. The Lord fed them when they were hungry. He gave them water when they were thirsty. And they learned how to make places to live, like they called them booths or homes, where they was like a tent dwelling. They lived in homes called booths, like tents. They also, God told them to establish a tent of tabernacle, a place where they could meet like a church. And he said, I will come over that tabernacle. And I believe when they started moving through the desert, he would come over that tabernacle, like his presence, would come over that tabernacle. So the people would know this is the day that we serve the Lord. He established times and days and festivals with them, and how they should live and how they should clean themselves, how they should be holy before him, before they should consecrate, how they should tithe and give. He established all the laws during this time, a lot of the laws. This was just a time of them learning how to live before God. Let's see here. He also set the 10 Commandments, which that's in Exodus 20. And that was a big developer of how they should treat one another and the things that they should be doing. And then he said, now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. He told that to Moses, that the 10 Commandments was his judgments that will be set before the children of men and how they should live. And so let's go ahead on. There's a lot of things all the way through Exodus that are interesting. But when you get into Leviticus, it has to do with the laws of priesthood. Let's see here. The end of Exodus talks about Moses finished the work of the tabernacle. He was making a church, and everything has to be holy and consecrated inside of their tent called Tent of Meeting. A cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because a cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. So the Lord led them with the cloud. They knew that they could travel when the cloud was moved away. And at night, fire was upon this tabernacle. So he actually was a part of them, watching their movements and helping them to get through the wilderness. Now in Leviticus, it says here, Leviticus is where it says, he spake unto the children of Israel and say unto them, if a man bring an offering to the Lord, ye shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd and of the flock. In Leviticus, they were learning how to sacrifice to God. They were learning how to be consecrated before him. He was teaching them a lot of things in Leviticus. A lot of laws were established. A lot of Jewish laws were established. Let me see what happened in Numbers. So I'm not going to be able to do the whole, read the whole amount of things here. I'm just going to go through and highlight some areas of Leviticus and Numbers, and then I'll come back on here and tell you about that. And then I'm going to do a little bit of reading of Deuteronomy as well. I want to get you up to where David became and reigned as king. Because at the end, the children of Israel, they were out there, supposed to be out there for like 3 months in the wilderness before they went to the promised land. but they were actually out there for 40 years. 3 months turned into 40 years because they were disobedient and they had stopped doing a lot of the things they were told to do. So they all perished in the wilderness. Nobody lived but I think Joshua and Aaron. Moses had passed away because he had old. It was only Joshua and Aaron that was left. After 40 years, they all died in the wilderness. They all disobeyed whatever they had to do. So, let's see. So when I come back on here, we'll read some more in Leviticus and Numbers. Have a good day.